Are you ready to take control of your financial future? Barry Watts with WealthCare has the strategies you need to plan for a successful retirement. Whether you're planning for retirement, saving to live out your dreams, or looking to grow your wealth, Barry has resources to guide you every step of the way. Barry and the team at WealthCare develop customized plans to help you achieve your financial goals. Welcome to Watts on Wealth with Barry Watts.
Hello and welcome into Watts on Wealth, the TV show. I'm your host, Ralph Hipp. Estate planning is not something that many people put at the top of their to-do list. It's something you cannot avoid forever, though. Barry Watts is with me to explain how estate planning is something that all of us might consider sooner rather than later. Barry Watts is with me, the founder and CEO of WealthCare Corporation right there in Springfield. Barry, it's great to be back with you and kind of starting our show at the end of life with estate planning.
Yeah, well, we've got to start somewhere, Ralph, and we might as well start there for today's show.
And don't delay. Many retirees that think they can do their estate planning later, that is simply not the case. So Barry, when do you recommend that retirees begin the estate planning process?
Well, I think it's the wrong question because you inserted the word retirees. I think everybody should do estate planning. I wrote my first will when I was 25 years old, and I didn't have anything to give away, but somehow I thought it was really important to have a will. And so I got one put in place. And then when we had children in our early 30s, we had complete estate plans prepared. That's trust and wills and powers of attorney and healthcare powers of attorney and healthcare directives. Now the kids have all grown up and left home, gone on their way, and we've accumulated a lot more assets. So we've done it again. You see, Ralph, estate planning is not so much an event. Oh, I got it done, never to be visited again. Instead, it's an ongoing process of updating, pausing, and updating again a few years later. So I would say start sooner rather than later. Update anytime there is a life change. And if you don't have a life change, you probably need to update about every 3 years. And this is going to prevent a tremendous amount of emotional pain and suffering by your loved ones if you get your house in order.
And Barry, it seems like update and reevaluate.
Always,
are
because
the
things may change. You know, you may have an in-law who does something dumb and becomes an outlaw. And that could be why you need to change your estate plan.
That's right. Barry, there are probably a lot of us who just don't think estate planning ought to be a part of their retirement plan, but it's a misnomer to say estate planning is only for the ultra wealthy. Professionals say you don't have to be older and rich to start your planning, do you?
Well, that's absolutely true, Ralph. And we think that it's not appropriate to be incremental in this. Instead, you need to get it done all in one fell swoop. Now, today, most trusts and wills and powers of attorney and healthcare directives come in a package. So for $1 amount, one engagement, you can generally have all of that done for you, the whole shooting match all at once. Probably going to cost you a couple of $1,000s, maybe as much as $3,000, but it's money very well spent. So don't dally, don't delay, and don't do part of it. Get it all done.
And Barry, I'd like to ask you about the misconceptions a lot of married couples may have. Many couples think that if a will is not there, then automatically all their assets and all their investments go to their spouse. And that is not the case. Can you explain why?
Well, it's what you may want to happen, but no, if you haven't specified that that happens in estate planning documents, then that's not what's going to happen. In fact, the state that you live in has a will for anyone who doesn't have a will. And the state's will may not be the things that you would have wanted done. For example, in Missouri, a surviving spouse has to split their assets with the children. And so effectively what happens if you die without any estate planning done, instead of all of it going to your spouse, it'll go to your spouse and your kids. The assets become split. And so you've partially disinherited your spouse. I can tell you that wouldn't go over very well at my house if my wife knew that had occurred. And that's not what I want to happen. I want to take care of the kids, but only after I make sure that Kelly is taken care of first and foremost.
Right. What are some of the ways we could transfer our assets, Barry, to other beneficiaries without creating a lot of drama and disharmony in the family?
Well, there's almost always in every family somebody who insists on there being some drama, and it's really hard to deal with that portion. But I'll tell you what you can do to avoid your part of it to the best degree possible is be sure that you have things in order. Now, one of the things that I would remind you of is that there is nothing more unequal than the equal treatment of unequals. I'm going to let that rest on you for a moment and just think about it.
I'm getting what you're saying there, though. I
There's
understand that.
nothing more unequal than the equal treatment of unequals. So you may have two children who are very unequal. You love them both tremendously, but that's not to say that they're both in the same place in life. One of them may have married well, or may have, invented something and sold it, and they've got a lot of money from it. They've saved and invested and got, and the other one may have just fallen on hard times. Their marriage went bad. Everything they did had some bad touch to it, and along the way they've struggled. Maybe they had a child who has struggled. And so the point is, you may want to treat those children differently in your estate plan, and it's perfectly appropriate, I believe, to do that. You want to address that situation, though, directly and head on with documents and plans that you can fall back on that say, this is exactly how I want it done. Then I would suggest that you want to sit down with your children and educate them on what you have done and why you have done that. And through WealthCare Corporation, we sit down with the next generation and talk to them about what mom and dad have and about the plans mom and dad have for how they're going to distribute that upon the death of mom and dad. So it's hard work, but it's worth the work because it takes your family further in terms of preserving peace and harmony.
Discussing estate planning with the incredible J. Barry Watts of the WealthCare Corporation. All good insights on estate planning to keep in mind for you and your family. Drama aside, we hope. Leaving a positive legacy is the goal. Some people, though, worry about how much it'll cost them. Coming up next on Watts on Wealth, the TV show, Barry will explain what you can expect to pay during your retirement.
How does your future look in retirement? When you don't have a strategy, the future might look a little fuzzy. But with someone asking the right questions and helping you learn where you truly stand, it can become easier to work towards your goals. You need a plan to help generate income that will last as long as you need it. And the first step to creating an income plan is an analysis of where you are now. Let us help you bring your retirement into focus with your free income analysis today.
On the surface, your retirement plan might look solid. With your 401k or IRA, Social Security, investments, and insurance coverage, you appear to have it all covered. But what could you be missing? Below the surface, is your retirement exposed to too much risk? It's time for a deeper dive into your portfolio. We can help you uncover the risk that lies beneath the surface and learn about strategies to help preserve your savings. Get your free risk analysis today.
And carrying on with Watts on Wealth, the TV show. This is your host, Ralph Hipp, alongside Barry Watts, the CEO and founding father of the WealthCare Corporation in Springfield at Highway 65 and Battlefield Road. We're discussing estate planning on the show today. It doesn't have to cost a lot. It's very must-do for your family. Barry, is there a fairly cost-effective option for retirees to get ready for estate planning?
Well, you can spend as much money on this as you want to, Ralph, and most people, of course, don't want to spend very much money. So you can actually go to websites and download basic wills and trust documents and kind of fill them out yourself if you wanted to. Now, those may or may not get the job done. They may or may not be sufficient in the state where you live, but I suppose it's better than doing nothing at all. My recommendation would be that you work with a qualified estate planning attorney, and we've done that for hundreds of our clients through the years, helped hook them up with those estate planning attorneys. That's what we do at the WealthCare Corporation. We introduce you to the things that you need to do, introduce you to the people who can do those things for you, and then we kind of run interference because sometimes other professionals speak language that's a little bit Greek. I always accuse lawyers of speaking Latin, and they do that some, you know. It's called Juris Doctorate.
And I call it legalese.
Well, legalese is probably the more easy way to understand it, yes. And so sometimes we cut through that and we say, here's what that word and here's what that term means. So reach out to us at the WealthCare Corporation. We'll help you in the same way that we have a lot of other people in the past to get your estate plans put in order so your money goes where you want it to go, when you want it to go there.
Barry, with so many choices and options out there with you or out there in the nether region on the websites, so many choices, why do you think people procrastinate so much and delay on estate planning?
Oh, Ralph, I have stories that people tell me all the time in my office about, they'll have a father who's in his 90s.
Yeah.
and the kids don't know how much money there is, and he's not done anything with regard to estate planning that they know of. I think that's just absurd and ridiculous. And I think the reason is because people want to deny that death is coming. It's not a fun topic, but it's inevitable. I don't know if you've seen the latest statistics, but they're pretty impressive. 1 out of every 1 person dies. And so it's coming for you and it's coming for me. And a part of our responsibility as mature human beings is to deal with it and prepare for it. I think people are afraid. They're afraid to die. They're afraid of what comes after death. And quite honestly, I think that's one of the things that you ought to deal with first. That's more important than the estate planning. I've got to tell you, Ralph, if something happens to me today, I know exactly where I'm going, exactly where I'll be, exactly who I'll be with, and I'm eager to be in heaven with my Father God. And the way I get to go there is because of what Jesus Christ did for me on the cross in forgiving me of my sin and paying the price for my sin. I'm so grateful for that and grateful to know that. So I'm not scared to die. Now, I'm not in any hurry. I'm not looking to go tonight necessarily, but if I do, I always tell people, I'm okay. Don't you worry about Barry. You just be sure and take care of Kelly. And so I think people are afraid to die. And what I want to recommend to you is if you're just sitting there saying, well, he's got me, I'm afraid to die, I want to tell you something to do. I want to encourage you to go online and go to the website for billygraham.org. Go to YouTube and look for messages from Billy Graham. He wrote a book one time called How to Be Born Again. And I think that reading that would be very helpful to you. So I would suggest you get yourself prepared to die in that way before you even worry about planning your estate.
Right. I've got to mention, Barry, when Billy Graham came to the Kansas City area and Arrowhead Stadium, you know, when the Chiefs are there filling it up, Billy Graham filled it up. And to hear his message in person was something that I will never forget. And we can still have that live on with his messages on that website.
Well, so, I never got to hear Billy in person, but I have been to the Billy Graham Center in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Great place.
And I stood in Billy's pulpit, in fact, and saw Billy's Bible and his message notes. It's really exciting and interesting to me. I'm interested in that sort of stuff. This is a very, very important topic. It's more important than financial stuff, Ralph, in the end. And so I hope all of our viewers are oriented toward being sure that they have their eternal destination in mind, because getting your assets prepared and not getting your soul prepared, ooh, that's a pretty serious mistake.
Yeah, so having that message live on, even
Yes.
if it's inside your family, is also what we're talking about there. Any other discussion, Barry, on any critical points of what is the best time to update our estate plan? We've been over this before.
Anytime there changes.
Would it be necessarily every year or every 5 years?
I kind of say every 3 years, but anytime something changes, you know, you get a new in-law, you lose an in-law, you lose a child, you adopt a child, you lose a spouse, you remarry. These are times to adjust your estate plan. So anytime there is a change, you inherit a lot of money, you win the lottery, you discover oil in your backyard. That'd be a good time. Bitcoin hit big for you. By the way, I wouldn't suggest that idea, but more
That's
power.
not one of your recommended
No,
strategies.
it's not. But more power to you. So the point is, when something changes, you should work on your estate plan, and you probably should review it about every 3 years just to be sure it's in order.
It seems what you're telling me, Barry, it should be based on events more than time on the calendar.
Pretty much, yes.
Mostly on
Has
events.
anything
All right.
changed? And has the law changed? Maybe nothing's
good.
changed in your family, but maybe the rules have changed or the tax law has changed. You know, right now, Ralph, you can leave like $13 million and your wife can leave like $13 million to your kids.
And?
$26 million. Now, I know a TV pro like you, that probably isn't going to cover it. But you can right now leave $26 million. Did you know in 2026, that number cuts back to $6 million? And so the point is, the law is always changing, and you need to adjust your plan to not only deal with changes in your family and your situation, but changes with the law and the tax law as well.
Even that one mention there, some very important insights, Barry, and we sure appreciate all your knowledge about estate planning. Coming up on our show, Barry will break down some of the retirement steps you cannot afford to overlook. That's next in his Steps to Confidence. Still to come, Barry and I will answer some of your questions, and in a moment, we'll be right back.
Planning for retirement can be complicated. Helping create income that lasts, making sure your health care is covered, investing while managing risk, and don't forget about taxes. If you're overwhelmed, you're not alone. The good news is we have what you need to give you confidence to start planning for your ideal retirement, all in one convenient resource. You'll get answers to some of your biggest retirement questions in this easy-to-understand, practical resource. And best of all, there's no cost to you. Take the first step toward a confident retirement and get yours today.
On the surface, your retirement plan might look solid. With your 401k or IRA, Social Security, investments, and insurance coverage, you appear to have it all covered. But what could you be missing? Below the surface, is your retirement exposed to too much risk? It's time for a deeper dive into your portfolio. We can help you uncover the risk that lies beneath the surface and learn about strategies to help preserve your savings. Get your free risk analysis today.
When it comes to planning for the future, time may not always be on your side. Think about your taxes. Tax rates are historically low right now, but they'll likely be higher in the future. Our current tax rates are set to expire in just a few short years. With the right planning and strategy, you might be able to cut your tax bill in the years to come. But don't wait until it's too late to take advantage of today's lower tax rates. Let us be your partner in planning for tomorrow so you can enjoy your retirement today.
Time now to check in with Barry for more steps to confidence as Barry recaps the items you need to put on your estate planning checklist. Barry?
Thank you, Ralph. One of the things that we always like to help retirees with is planning their estate. And there are several considerations, things that perhaps you want to put on your checklist to look at when it comes to being sure that your estate is in order. Now, be aware that you don't have to plan your own estate. In fact, if you do nothing, well, the state of Missouri already has an estate plan that they will put in place for you. Now, let me ask you this question. When was the last time you were really enthusiastic about the ideas the politicians had, so much so that you would want to surrender your will to theirs and just let them plan your estate? I'm guessing that's not what you want to do. And so unless you want to just surrender your will to the state and let the folks in Jefferson City settle your estate out, you're going to want to do some estate planning. Now, be aware of this. If you have your estate shared with your spouse, for example, you own a piece of property that has both of your names on it, you can be joint tenants with right of survivor. And that means when one spouse dies, the other spouse just inherits the property, and that can be perfectly fine. But what if those spouses died together in a common accident? And we weren't able to decide which spouse died first, or maybe they both died at exactly the same time. Well, then what happens to that piece of property? We don't know unless we've done further estate planning. Now, I think it's very important to be sure that all of your financial assets have beneficiaries established on them. You can do that with investment accounts by putting transfer on death on your investment accounts. And when you die and your spouse dies, if you have a transfer on death on your account, then it's going to go to probably your children, whoever you name as the beneficiaries, automatically. As soon as they show up with the death certificate, in a matter of a couple of days, the assets are theirs. Things that you have held at the bank can be transferred to beneficiaries using pay on death, or POD. Real estate can go to beneficiaries using what is called a beneficiary deed. And so there are ways to move your assets to the next generation, to the heirs you want it to go to, by using contractual documents that name those beneficiaries, and those assets will automatically go to those people. They don't go to probate. No lawyers have to be involved. It's simple and straightforward. Now, the question always comes up, though, what about things that maybe you forgot to assign to someone as your beneficiary? You just didn't think of that account. You forgot to do it. Or the real famous one is, what if you bought a lottery ticket, won the lottery, and fell over dead with the ticket in your pocket? Who does the lottery ticket belong to? Well, that's where a will comes in. Because a will take anything that you haven't already assigned to someone else by contract, any beneficiaries that haven't been named, and it will cover anything that has not already been named. So in that case of the lottery ticket, well, then the will would cover that. But here's what you've got to be aware of. Wills have to go to probate. And probate takes 18 to 24 months, costs about 5% of all the assets going through probate. So I think it's a good idea to avoid that. Now, one way you can avoid it beyond putting beneficiaries on your accounts is through the use of a trust. And trusts fully avoid probate. But I got to tell you, people show up in our office all the time with the trust and they don't know what it is. And the first question we always ask them is, has your trust been funded? And they say, I don't know. And they don't know. And then we start looking for their investment accounts and they're not in their trust. And the beneficiaries aren't set properly on their other accounts to go to their trust. And their real estate hasn't been put in their trust. In fact, I was at a conference just last weekend where I heard it said that 85% of trusts are unfunded. That means they're nothing but a piece of paper that has no value to the people who own them. So trusts can be a good idea. We use them for our clients. I use them personally, but you just have to realize that just having the document isn't what you need. If you haven't funded that document, it doesn't do for you what you wanted done. Now, there are a couple of other items that will need to go into your estate planning. You need powers of attorney, financially and for healthcare. And you want to be sure that those powers of attorney say on them that they are durable. Because if they aren't durable, once you lose, for example, mental capacity, then your power of attorney can go away. So you need a power of attorney that lets somebody make financial decisions, a power of attorney that lets somebody make healthcare decisions. And then the question with regard to the healthcare decision is, what decision do you want them to make? Well, the document that covers that is called the Healthcare Directive or a living will. So you want to be sure that you spell out for your spouse and your surviving children, in most cases, what decisions you want them to make. Do you want them to take heroic measures to sustain your life? Do you want to be on machines to preserve your life? Or once it appears the end is near, do you want those things to all go away? If you'll write that down, and if you'll say who's in charge of making those decisions, and you put it all in an official document, well, then it makes it much easier for your family to make the decisions they need to make during that difficult time. Those are the items on the checklist for how you ought to do your estate planning. Back to you, Ralph.
And thank you very much, Barry Watts. Still to come, we'll hear directly from you in our Q&A section with Watts on Wealth returns right after this.
How does your future look in retirement? When you don't have a strategy, the future might look a little fuzzy. But with someone asking the right questions and helping you learn where you truly stand, it can become easier to work toward your goals. You need a plan to help generate income that will last as long as you need it. And the first step to creating an income plan is an analysis of where you are now. Let us help you bring your retirement into focus with your free income analysis today.
On the surface, your retirement plan might look solid. With your 401k or IRA, Social Security, investments, and insurance coverage, you appear to have it all covered. But what could you be missing? Below the surface, is your retirement exposed to too much risk? It's time for a deeper dive into your portfolio. We can help you uncover the risk that lies beneath the surface and learn about strategies to help preserve your savings. Get your free risk analysis today.
Now it's time for Barry and me to get to some of your questions you have today. And ready to get started on that, Barry?
I'm ready.
I love to see who the people are and where they're from.
It's interesting. I always wonder if it's a town and the name I recognize. I wonder if it's the one I know.
Or if they know people that you know.
Oh, I'm sure they do. You know, it's a really small world.
We're going to start in Humansville, Missouri. And Jim says, I'm 65 years old. I wrote my will when I was 50. Oh, good for you, Jim, on that. And there's nothing in my will that I want to change. Do I still need to update that? So it's been 15 years.
Yeah, Jim, great question. Yeah, let me tell you, your will is still in force. So if literally nothing has changed, then perhaps you don't need to update it. But I just want to ask you this question. Do you want everything to go through probate? I'm guessing that you wouldn't want that if you knew what probate was. Probate's a time when everybody in your county gets to see everything you have because it's a public process. They file it down at the courthouse, and anybody can go look up how much money you had in the bank, who you owed money to, who your beneficiaries were. So, you know, people are really reserved about their financial information, and then they die and go through probate, and everything is open to the public. Why would you subject yourself to that? Why would you subject your heirs to 18 to 24 months before they can get the money? Why would you subject your heirs to having to pay 5% of your assets, that's $50,000 on $1 million roughly, to go through the probate costs when you can do all of that at no cost? Instead, I want to suggest, leave your will in place, but let's use contractual beneficiary designations. For example, if you've got a life insurance policy, you have a beneficiary placed on that life insurance policy. Hopefully, you put your heirs on there. If you have a 401k, hopefully you have your heirs mentioned on there, who you want that money to go to. You probably ought to be checking on that. You can use, if you've got a brokerage account, something called a TOD, transfer on death, that says the account is yours, but upon my death, here are the family members that I want it to go to. On a piece of real estate, you can't do a transfer on death, but you can do something called a beneficiary deed. Works the same way. That way, when you die, your farm or your property goes to whoever you want it to go to without going through probate. And then there's something that you use down at the bank called pay on death instead of transfer on death. I don't know why it's called something different, but your bank account can be pay on death to your heirs. You can even put a TOD, transfer on death, on the title to your automobile. So these steps will save your family the hassle of going through probate, and I would highly recommend that you take those steps in addition to the will that you have already written.
Very good, sir. On to Mountain Grove, Missouri, and this letter to you, Barry, from Laura. Laura says, my father died at 67 and did not leave a will. My mom is 70 in senior living now and can barely communicate with me. My father had told me he wanted all 4 of his children, including me, to be taken care of, but I don't know how to go about that on his finances when there is no will.
Well, I see this happen more often than you might want to believe. People who say, well, I want the money to go to all the kids, and so I've just left the money to the oldest child and told him to distribute it to the other children. Would you believe often it just never gets distributed to the other kids? Money really causes people to make stupid family decisions. And so, Laura, here's what I'm going to say to you. You definitely need an attorney. There are several complications in the story that you told, the question that you asked. And so if your dad didn't leave any written directive, then it means that you inherit part of the estate alongside your siblings, and your mom does too. But then if she goes into long-term care, you could run yourself into quite a problem. And even if Medicaid isn't an issue, but if Medicaid is an issue and there's not enough money to go around to pay for her long-term care, the problems are only magnified. So here's what I've got to say to you. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Do not let your shirt tail hit you. You need a lawyer. And if you don't know one, there's a good one in Mountain Grove, by the way, that I do know who I think would be able to help you. You reach out to us at the Wealth Care Corporation. We'll connect you with somebody who can help you with this complicated problem.
Whether it's the advice that Barry actually gives you or the references that you can provide on specific legal help or things of that nature, Barry, the Wealth Care Corporation is the place to start. Get
We're
those
there to help
questions
people.
answered. All right. Barry, thank you. Appreciate the answers and appreciate all your questions there and the insights from Barry Watts. If you want to know some ways to generate lifetime income, reduce your big bill on taxes to Uncle Sam, and maintain the lifestyle you want in your retirement, reach out now in this coming week to start planning for your ideal retirement. For Barry Watts and the whole team at Springfield's Wealth Care Corporation, I'm Ralph Hipp, and Barry and I wish you a healthy and happy journey to and through your retirement.